let's see how to use this texture as a dirt map for the PSD file we are working with. But before that, I want to just clean it up a little bit more. And I want to show you a technique I normally use. I take the rectangular marquee tool and I try to take an area I want to make new. So this area here, I don't need these elements, so I'm trying to select them with a little bit of border on all around. Okay, I don't be too precise, don't make a selection too close to the object. And then of course I need to go on the layer with the content and press Shift F5, and of course content aware, and normally this makes the trick, as you can see. And I'm happy with the results. I don't want any orange color. That's a little bit too much. Okay, so with the spot healing brush tool, maybe with a little bit more of hardness. Okay, we don't even need the pen to do this. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. So that's it. Now we can just make a single layer of everything we have here. So Control Alt Shift E on the keyboard. And then we, normally what I do is I convert this into a smart object even before bringing it into the PSD file. And the reason is maybe when you bring it into the PSD file, I don't know, maybe you scale it without thinking, and so you lose information. So you don't want that. So I'm just going to convert this into a smart object. And you can save this as a PSD as I've done, so you can always go back to this in any case. And now I just bring this into my PSD. And yeah, we have a different quality, a different depth in the new file because, this was a texture, it was 8-bit. So guys, if you want maximum quality, you need to go out and take your own pictures, your own photos of textures. And the best thing you can do is to wait for an overcast day. So, avoid direct light into your textures. Or, there's nowadays a lot of de-lighting softwares. But any case, an overcast picture is the best. And now what can I do? I can just go inside adjustment, make a new folder. And this will be, I don't know, outside sync. There's a sync there. I put a texture inside. And now I go for a mask. And I look for the right mask, which is probably, let me see. I can't tell from this. No. Do we have it? Yes, here we go. Blue channel. So control click on the blue thumbnail. Then you go back on the layers, you hide the masks. Let's make this a little bit smaller. And then add the selection as a mask to the group. And here we go. Now, what can we do here? Normally what I do is this. I go 100%, not more. And then I Control T to get the anchors, okay? And I make this image a lot smaller. This is something you can do immediately when you import the texture into your file, but what you want to do is you don't want to see any kind of pixel problem, The quality should be as higher as you can, okay? And then while you're here with the mask still visible, you move around this layer and you stop when you see some kind of details that you may like. Okay. Now I feel like this is even, this is still too big. So I'm scaling it down, because normally what I try to do is I try to match some details coming from the texture to something that is already in the render. Okay, I don't know, maybe a line, or maybe some kind of, I don't know, cracks, or just, some, I don't know, dirty spot, and to do that, we can go down with the opacity and just a little bit. And as you can see here, we have some kind of tiles. We have some gaps in the 3D model, and we can align, some of the details of the texture to those details in the 3D model, and it will be a lot better. Okay, so now this is one. This is the first part of the video, and then we can normally Control J once to have a duplicate, and the reason is with one of these textures, with one of this layer, we are going to simulate some bump, and then with another one we are going to simulate some dirt. Okay, so it's up to you what you want to start with. So what to do here, we can do some dirt, for example. And one thing we can try to play with is blending modes, because you never know what could happen. Okay, and so for example, we can start with multiply to keep only the dark, I would say, informations. And multiply is not bad, even if this part is probably too strong, but we can fix that. Okay, I like this very much. But let's move it a little bit and see what happens. So this is okay. Let me see if I can find some, informations that can, make sense in terms of, lines. We can even duplicate, we can even, Control T and, right click, flip horizontal if we want. Maybe we want some, maybe we have seen some information that we like more if they were flipped. It's a little bit of, trial and error, but it's part of the trick, it's part of the job, it's part of the play. And if you can find some kind of information that match with the 3D model, the end result will be a lot better, because it makes more sense, I would say. Okay, makes more sense, something like this, you see. Okay, so for example, I like the result with this top part. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to keep this layer till this point here, because I like this result. So I make a selection and mask this, and as you can see, the lower part now is clean again. But I don't care, because I can just duplicate this and I invert the mask. See, Control I, selecting the mask. And now I can move the content without, moving the mask. So I unlink the content. Okay, this is the lower part. And I can just move it around. You see, the mask is still there. And I can find some, elements I like for the bottom part. I can even Control T and rotate it 90 degrees. Okay. And see if I like this more. I'm doing this with you, right now, so you can, try to do it as I'm doing it. Okay, I like this. Very cool. So this is the result I want, okay? And I like it as it is. And now I can, just select these two, make a copy. We take this, we keep this as it is. This is our backup. We don't touch it. And now we take this, we go back to normal mode. When you go back to 100% opacity, okay, and we merge them together. So this is going to be our bump map. Now, to make a bump map, we go back to our smart object because, we need to apply a filter and we don't know if the first time we are going to apply the filter is gonna, look good. We want a backup, I would say. And then we go to filter, stylize, emboss. And basically the emboss is just a simple fake way to generate a bump map. And when you have emboss as a filter, the layer itself goes into overlay mode. And you want that because overlay will generate shadows where these images dark and speculars where this image is white, it's bright. And mid-gray is going to disappear, as you will see. Now, the thing is, first of all, this is a fake bump, okay? So what you want to do is you want to keep this as, I would say, more possible than you can do. And if you increase the height too much, you see the result is not good. So we keep this 1 pixel. And then this is not a displacement, okay? This is a bump. So bump should be very, very soft, very weak, I would say. And then the amount should go down a lot, okay? This is why we have a smart object, because if you don't like then these values, you can just double click on the smart filters and get back here and fix it, and that's it. And this is the direction of the sun, basically. So as you can see, our sun comes from something like here, okay? So I try to put this in the direction of the sun. And as you can see now, we have shadows on the left and highlights on the right, and which makes a lot of sense. And then I press OK. And this is the result, but I need to bring this into overlay. When I bring this to overlay, mid-gray will disappear, and only bright and dark areas will stay. You see, and it works as a bump. Now, again, this is too much. Okay, this is too much. So I'm just going down with the opacity, and it's gonna work a little bit more. Now there is a trick in here. Since this effect, this filter works on pixel size. If you feel like that the bump is too big, you can generate the emboss on a copy, okay, of your smart object like this. See, stylize, emboss. And so now the bump will be very, very, very small, as you can see. And then you smart object this again, okay? Because if you take this and you Control T and you scale it, the smart filter, so the emboss will be applied after you press enter. And so it doesn't make sense to do this, okay? But if you right click, convert to smart object, then the smart filter will be encapsulated into this new smart object. And then you just need to scale it down, and the proportion of the bump will be kept, okay? And this makes sense a lot more, see? So, if you feel like your bump is too big, you can do this. You can do this trick. Now, this is very like small details for me, and I don't really care. For this part here, you see this part should be different because it's not frontal to us. It should be stretched in a different way in perspective. But since this is like really like a few pixels, in this case, I don't care, okay? You will see anyway how to do this in the next example, how to put something in perspective, okay? So this is it. And of course, you can decide how strong the dirt could be. So you can make, you can take these 2 layers, which are the dirt, and press Ctrl G to make a new subgroup, and then mask it, and then Control I to invert the mask, and this is now clean. I don't like the bump, it's too big, it's too, but for this moment is okay. We can just go down. Probably from this, from this distance, you're not going to see any bump anyway. So I'm keeping this very, very subtle, and I'm painting dirt manually with a brush. Okay, so I'm going to paint this, see, on the top and a little bit at the bottom. And maybe we can paint a little bit of dirt here on the inside. So I make a selection and then I paint here, see, because maybe I want some dirt falling down from the inside. And then I go down with we can go back with the flow to 100 and go down with the opacity. See, and I'm just painting a little bit on the sides. And then if you want, you can go down with the opacity, the size, sorry, but you can use the pen. And so you can turn on the size on pressure, increase the opacity, and then see, just with a very thin brush and a low pressure, you can do something like this. Okay. And remember that in this case, you can zoom in, but anyway, you should look at the image from 100%. Okay. Zooming in is something that I don't like to do. And the reason is people should look at the entire image, not at, one part of it, because that's not the meaning of making an image. Okay. You should have a full experience of the entire scene. And so that's why I almost never zoom in when I work. Okay, I prefer to look at the whole thing, and then I zoom in only when I need to paint some details, like in this case. But then I go back to 100% as soon as possible. Okay. Now, what we can do with this concrete wall. Oh, and just to be clear about the bump, since now we have a nicer version of it, okay, we can even use this one, and we don't care about if this doesn't match with dirt. Bump cannot match with dirt, so we can just take this one and to bring this layer into the PSD, you can just drag and drop it into the PSD, or you can right click in here on the gray part of the layer and then click on duplicate layer, and in the document drop down menu you pick the PSD. Okay, this is one way or the other. And then since we have this, see, bump in here somewhere, Control T, and you will see where it is. We can zoom in now and can make this even smaller. All right. Okay, cool. And maybe I can take it away from the inside. I don't care to have the bump on the inside. So I invert with the selection I got, and that's it. All right. So now about the concrete wall, we can go back in here and take the same layer, bring in there, but this time we look if we already have a folder for the concrete wall. Yeah, we have it, it's here. So we bring this on top of the concrete wall. Here we go. And we want to put this in perspective. So we Control T and then we right click and we use distort. We can use perspective, but I don't like it. There's some constraints I don't really enjoy to have. So if you have distort, you can just select pin on the borders and make it like this. So you can move them in perspective by yourself. And of course, because this is a square, the texture is a square and is not a rectangle, we can, you know, bring this up and try to follow the same, see, perspective lines. Okay, the cool thing is with a smart object, when you pick a perspective like this, then if you press Ctrl T again, or you scale, instead of going with a distort, you go with a scale, it will scale in perspective if you press Shift. Okay, in my version of Photoshop, you need to press Shift. Probably in the newer versions, you don't need to do that. Okay, you just scale, but it will scale in perspective, which is great because you can just, you don't have to deal with the perspective anymore. Okay, and that's it. So I like this. Now, what can we do? We can go again in multiply, for example. We can go down with the opacity. And because I want dirt only on the outsides, I want the inside of the house to be clean, I can just make a mask with a selection like this. Okay. Now, you can also have something like this kind of dirt. Okay. You can download these kind of textures from the internet. And if you have this kind of stuff, you can just drag inside the PSD, and they will become smart object by default. So you place them where you want, you right click the store. And even if you have something that small, you need to put that in perspective anyway. Okay, so try to follow the same perspective you have on the wall, and then you press enter when you are done. And normally what I do is I keep them very subtle, very subtle. And if you want a very strong result, because maybe it's an old building or something like that, try to get to the end result adding more than just one of them. Otherwise, they're too visible and, it may look fake, okay? And also try to follow the type of dirt you can actually get. Because, for example, here we have some water. So here we can have some, I don't know, fungus or, algae or, I don't know, mushrooms or stuff like that. Okay, I'm just pretending. And then here, for example, we have something that looks green. And you can import that thing and then scale it in distort again. Maybe you want something very, very, very subtle, very small, okay? So you try to follow the perspective, you see. We can zoom in a little bit this time. See? Press enter, and then you can go down with opacity, and it's up to you if going with multiply or darker. But anyway, now we have a little bit of green there, and I want these two, start in a kind of a smooth way. So I put a mask, I take a dark color here, 100% opacity, a very smooth brush, and I start to, delete it from there. Maybe I can make the brush a bit bigger and paint on that area, on that line. Now I can see there is a problem here with the reflection, which is too bright. So I immediately hide the props, which is, the grass on the front. Basically what you need is reflection, which is always darker than the actual object. So this is completely wrong, okay? This is completely wrong because the reflection is brighter than the actual object. And so what you need to do is you need to go inside here where you have this reflection, which is basically the swimming pool folder, friend pool. This should be it, okay? And then you need to work on this. So I put a curve, attach the curve to the reflection, make it darker. See? And then I want this effect only there. So I Control I to invert the mask. So the mask, basically, the content of the mask disappear. I select this and I press Control I again to get the effect only there. Okay. I should do that only even here. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm painting with a white value, probably like low opacity, only also this areas. Okay. This is already darker, so I'm going to touch it. Okay. A lot better. But still have that white line, which I don't know where it comes from. So I believe it's coming from the wall. So let me see, how can we fix it? This is the windows, glasses. So maybe we can paint here a little bit of dark color. Nope. Still not working. So when you don't know where to paint, okay, because now what we need to do is to paint a little bit of this color over there. The only thing you can do, the only thing you can try to do to, fix the problem is to put a empty layer on top of everything. So this layer is not being involved in any kind of masking. And then you take this color, the color you want to paint. So with the Alt, you get the picker. You click once. You go up with the opacity, and you put this layer into darken, and you start painting. Okay. You can even use the pen if you want. Okay. And as you can see, this is the quickest way to fix the problem. Okay. We can do this because it's a 1 pixel thing. You're not gonna see it, from far away. But this is like a brutal way to fix the problem if you don't know where the problem is. And then if you want, you can just try to take this layer into one of the different groups here. So we can try to put this into, I don't know, it depends where the problem is. Okay, so we can try to put this into the concrete wall and see if it fixes it. No, it's not. You see, probably is in the sidewalk. Let's try. Nope. It's probably in the pool. Sort of. You see, basically now this is going on top of the concrete too. So I mean, we can keep this on top for now and make it into a new group and say this is like fixes. Okay. And if we have something general to fix, we can put it there. And so this is it. Now I can see there is a problem here also with this border, this pool border. Probably comes from, the problem comes from the masks. We can fix this in a second moment. Also inside the fix folder, we can just use the clone tool or the stamp tool, So this is it. Now we can even do this. We can open one of these images. Okay, put a white canvas background, put a use iteration on top, bring it down, curves to contrast this, and now these could be your new brush tip. Okay, so you can have this, you can have the fine brush preset, say okay, and now you can go here, again, inside the concrete wall, And let's say we want some, dark leaks coming from the top. We can, go and add a curve. We can go down with the bright tones. Maybe we can add a little bit of green. If you want to add a little bit of green, you can add green like this, or you can have less red and less blue. Okay, it's one of the two. Okay, so this is a little bit like greener now. And now that I like the effect, I invert the mask, so the effect will go completely. But I'm now ready to use my new brush. So I can just go and, zoom in a little bit and make it smaller. See? And, if you are lazy and you don't want to create more than one brush, which you should, you can use different part of it. Okay, so you see I'm just using like that piece of the brush, and now we can, like, I don't know, go with a very low opacity and paint again, see, to get to use different part of it. I mean, of course, you can also rotate it up, upside down. It doesn't make sense because, leaks should be thinner on the lower part, but you can even use this to create some dirt coming up from the bottom like that. Not really appealing for a new buyer of this house, but this is how you can do that. Of course, you need tons of different brushes, and I mean, you can spend 1 hour making 50 new brushes, and then you will be happy for at least a couple of months or maybe forever. Okay, so this is something you can do. And remember that you can also use one of the textures you cleaned up. Okay, so let's say that you have this one, okay, and you want to make it smaller, but you don't want to spend your time painting the mask. Okay, so let's take this and put in perspective, at least a little bit. Okay, so let's say you don't want to spend your time painting these masks. You can open one of these type of texture. I don't know, this one, for example, which have basically transparent backgrounds. You put this in perspective. Like this. Okay, let's move it up a little bit. Okay, and now that this is in place, oops, I make a few copies of this, my mistake. Okay, you can control click on this to get the selection and mask this, or even better, you can take this one on top. Okay, this is the texture, you put it on top, and then you use the Alt button and you click in the middle here to have this as a texture and this as a mask. See? And the cool thing about this is that you can still then move the content and the bottom layer will work as a mask. Okay? And you can do whatever you want here. You can blur this. You can, take this layer and put in, I don't know, multiply. Go down with the opacity. See? But this is the layer that defines the content, and this is the layer that defines the shape of your dirt. Okay? And if you want to change the blending mode, or if you want to change the opacity, the overall opacity, you need to change it on this layer, okay? Not the one attached. So now you have enough tools, enough ideas to start with to create some dirt and bump. And it's the same for glasses, but on glasses, if you look at references, you will find that basically, dry water, when it rains, when it falls down from, I don't know, something on the top, it creates a kind of a wider, bright result. So if you want to put some stains on glasses, you can do it. Of course, you need to change the folder. So the right folder should be the one with the reflection of the glasses, which is this one. Okay. So you can have it there. Or, since we paint some Fresnel, and dirt doesn't really apply to Fresnel, you can just keep the same mask and make a new folder up there with the Windows mask and call this one glasses dirt. And then you can keep this one in, I don't know, depend on the content, but you can use lighten or screen, see, or color dodge. And then you can go down with the opacity. Or, it depends on the strength you want to achieve. Let's say that if you have a couple of windows like this, it's better if you, if you start and end inside the frame so you don't see any kind of cut in the texture. And then again, you can have a more visible result with the same kind of brushes. Okay. Now I made it's not a mistake, but I want you to notice one last thing. Let's say that I'm painting this now white, very bright, I would say, stains on the glass. You can paint a couple of them, then press Ctrl T, and then squeeze them if you want, a more kind of thin line like this. Okay. But if you, instead of keeping the brush tip as it is here, if you rotate the canvas, so you go image rotation, 90 clockwise or anti-clockwise, I would say. And you create a brush like this. So edit, define brush preset. Okay. Now, why we did this? Because if you do this, you can then rotate the brush orientation to the bottom, and then you can also squeeze the brush, which is a lot better, because now you can just change this, the roundness, and you can get a very different result in a matter of seconds. Okay. Which brings me to think that if we, before making the brush, we take the image size, we unlink this, and we make this as a square. Okay, so we put here the same size we have up there. So if we get something like this, and we create another brush, and we do the same, rotate it to the bottom, resize it. Now we have even more differences. We can play with, you see, the roundness a lot more. Okay. Now, when I do this, I normally go down with the opacity because I don't like to exaggerate. I go down with the opacity and then I make a new layer and I keep doing it as long as I want. But I never go from 0 to 100 in just one layer because it's going to be too much visible, and most of the time it looks fake. Okay. So you see, I always make something and then I go down with the opacity and keep it low opacity. And now it's your turn to add some dirt on the building.